Go to this cloud. So we started the recording, and Gunther, well, the online floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Barry, and thank you for inviting me to share some ideas with the beautiful liberators people from around the world. Clearly, yeah, it's great. You know, it's called Organizing for Value. But I was thinking, oh my God, it's now 2022, right? And I remember 10 years ago, 2012, we organized the first Scrum Day Europe event in Amsterdam. I don't know if anybody knows. I don't, maybe somebody even was there in 10 years ago. And I was already talking about this topic. Poorly, it seems, because I still have to bring it up. It's never gotten implemented or whatever. So that was something, okay, I'm really bad at this. Hopefully, in the meantime, maybe the language, the words I used to explain it might have improved a little bit, but at least, but that was not by coincidence, 2012. I was still working for a large consulting company. And I was, that was about 1 or 2 years of experience with really large companies. And for whatever reason, as you know, Barry, mostly in the Netherlands, like the big Orange Bank and those types of companies. So I brought up some idea, and by then my creativity had some sort of limitations, let's say, because I explained it as what I now call organizing for value. I'll go into that. By then I felt like, oh, let's be really creative. I'm going to call this the COE, not the CEO, but the COE, so the customer-oriented enterprise. And it felt so much great for myself to say, oh, how fun would it be to be the CEO of the COE? And that felt like, that's a really good joke. And then probably noticed that nobody's laughing, like nobody's laughing today. That's why nobody sort of buys my ideas, because I'm really bad at wording them. But let me share them anyhow. So, hi everybody. And as Barry said, I'm going to try to share some sort of main insights on why and what my ideas consist of, what drives me in sharing them with you guys. And if you have really great questions, do put them in the chat. And I've kindly asked Barry to keep an eye on them. And if he sees a question popping out, it's really interesting that he can try to interrupt me. It's not an easy thing to stop me from talking, but you know, sometimes
luckily online we have the mute button. So
yes, and you're the boss of the meeting anyhow. So okay, cool. So let me share what I created for you guys. And as organizing for value. And as you can see, maybe the subtitle sort of rethinking your organization around Scrum. Something that bothers me in a lot of, let's say, Scrum adoptions, integral part of whatever people would call an Agile Transformation. So let me share a little bit. But Barry asked me also to quickly introduce myself. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I hate talking about myself anyhow. So my name is, I live in Belgium, in Antwerp, which is the Dutch or Flemish-speaking part of Belgium. If I would say my name in let's say, the Flemish-Belgian version of Dutch, it would be Gunther Verheyen. Now, good luck trying that. As long as you say something that looks or sounds like it, I'm totally fine. So I started doing this thing called Scrum a long time ago, back in 2003. I think we have Stan de Knut on the call or in the event. And I think Stan, we got to know each other around 2005 or so, or maybe 2007. I don't know, around that time, long time ago.
5, 6.
Yeah, cool. And so that's when my life of Scrum started. And I've got this little, what you're looking at is a little black box. It's in the back of my room next to my door. It's something that I found somewhere. It doesn't say it on the box, but the quote, it seems, somebody looked it up for me, is from George Bernard Shaw, the famous American novelist. And it's something that totally resonates with me. But it's also something that I found out throughout life. And something that I found that for me also applies to Scrum. In the sense that it says life isn't about finding yourself. because that would mean you would just sit around waiting for things to happen and to almost accidentally find life, as if there's some sort of predestined life that you're sort of after. Life is about creating yourself, and this also applies for me on Scrum, because Scrum is not about finding it. Scrum is about creating it yourself. In that sense, it's a call to action, do something. And it's something that bothers me a lot, actually, in a lot of the Scrum communities and on LinkedIn and other fora, is that this endless debates over sort of the nuts and bolts, or the whatever the words and whatever might be meant with the Scrum Guide, people talking about the rules of the game rather than going out there, playing the game, finding out for themselves, doing something with it. That's like just sitting around waiting for things to happen. Now, in my life of Scrum that started in 2003, by the way, my life of Scrum didn't start with Scrum, but something else called extreme programming, which was incredibly important for my life of Scrum. But I called myself a Scrum caretaker and added independent to that back in 2016, when I left, or when I stopped my exclusive partnership with Ken Schweber and Scrum.org. So I had to sort of come up with a decent title for myself. Before that, I had beautiful titles, worked for a consulting company and at Scrum.org. And I started calling myself a Scrum caretaker. And sort of my reason, and this, by the way, we've got Stan de Knut on the call. This is something that already, I remember back in 2007, sort of that popped up in my head. Why am I doing this? Why am I going through these pains, these heartaches, these headaches, this whatever, this stress, whatever, trying to do good for people and so on? It was actually a long time ago, Stan de Knut, that helped me see that for myself, that my life revolves around people. And that's why why I think Scrum is so powerful and beautiful. It's a way to humanize the workplace, which is so much more than just producing excellent quality and high quality products and so on. But that's sort of 2016, calling myself an independent Scrum caretaker. It seems to resonate with people, by the way, but still. Now, today we're going to talk about what I call organizing for value, or what I call rethinking the structures around Scrum. I remember back in 2013, which was another milestone, I wrote a little book about Scrum called Scrum, a Pocket Guide. And I ended my little book about Scrum with something that sort of sounded like, you know what, at some point in time, we will not talk about Scrum anymore. Scrum will have become the normal way of working. And it's my belief that at some point in time, organizations will have re-emerged or reinvented themselves around Scrum. Now, it's taking a little bit more time than expected, but that's why we're here to talk about it, right? And one of the reasons why it's taking, I believe, more time is that people still keep thinking that they need a model, a blueprint, a cookbook, or whatever, something that other people are doing, copy paste that, or look at, long time ago, still in some parts of the world, they think they need to do Spotify or whatever. And I don't believe that. In the Scrum Guide, in the rules of Scrum, there are no rules on how an organization should look like. And that's a good thing, because we can't say there are so many organizations around the world, all operating in very different domains, applying very different technology, consisting of very different people. There is no model that can describe or instruct how an organization should look like. That is just an illusion. So that helped me at some point in time come up with this little thing, quote saying, hey, all models are wrong, even the ones that are right. Some might just be less wrong than others. Keep that in mind. So my idea about organizing for value is not yet another model on the world. Please, let's stay away from that. Guidance, guiding rules, and so on. And Scrum has no rules on how to organize, but based upon Scrum or within Scrum, we can find some guidance. And that's what I want to talk about. But at least let's go back to the why of all of this, organizing for value. Organizations, certainly the ones that are sort of have their roots in what I would call the industrial age, or building up on the industrial paradigm, which I also described in my book. That means organizations are organized for sort of internal purposes, utilization, cost reduction, cost cutting, efficiency, doing the most with at least the least possible means and so on. So we're looking at ourselves, the inside of the organization. It's often based upon the consideration of people like as mindless workers, rather than looking at them as creative, intelligent people. And we've got these silos, departments, all again looking at ourselves, because departments brings together people with the same functional expertise or the same functional specialization. So we've got functional departments and silos. They are sort of cut off from each other, isolated from each other, and sort of the biggest barrier or the biggest isolation that we've built into our companies seems to be between business and IT. And then in order to transcend those departments and get people to actually work together, we think we should solve that with instructions or governance. Who should be talking to whom at what point in time, what documents and meetings and handovers and so on. All to get the most out of our, let's say, resources, our mindless workers. That is sort of industrial thinking, although it's my belief that even in industrial environment, this doesn't really work. It just doesn't work like that. But even if that would be the case, it's certainly not a good fit for today's way of, today's needs and the complex and creative work that we want to go for. Why? Because it is rigid, it is slow, it is full of waste, it's full of delays, it is rigid, it is fixed, there is no flexibility at all. And when organizations discover this, so that the rigidity of their way of organizing work, then it sees that for the past 10, 15, almost 20 years, probably the magical word is obviously, we need an agile transformation. Yeah, we want to be agile too. Agile, that sounds great. It seems nobody remembers that it was something like a manifesto a long time ago. And then often they go not just for an agile transformation, but an agile transformation with Scrum. Now, a problem with a lot of those organizations is not the fact that they have a lot of rigidity in their way of working, but also that they are clueless. They have no idea who they are, why they exist, why they even started a long time ago. They forgot all about it a long time ago, the startup atmosphere, maybe the reason of existence, purpose, and so on. They have no idea why they even exist. They might have some official values, company values out there somewhere, but that is marketing. That is not really that you should hold them to or hold them accountable for. So mission, purpose, meaning, why do you even exist? What is your contribution to the world, to society? They have no idea. Ask anybody. And then they're going to introduce Scrum as part of some sort of vague idea of an agile transformation. But in the end, they have no idea why Scrum. Not even in the sense of what are we trying to achieve with Scrum? What is our ambitions, or what are the challenges? What is the urgency? They have no idea about Scrum. So I like to go back to the essence or the basics of Scrum. So a long time ago, 2 years ago, by the beginning of the COVID crisis, I had to digest a little bit what was happening in the world before thinking I could also train online and be connected to people online like we are today. So I wrote a little paper about Scrum, again, from that annoyance that we are so stuck in debating, discussing, whatever, bashing, whatever the rules of Scrum, the works, doesn't work. What do Ken and Jeff mean with this word in the Scrum guide? So sort of pointless. It's time to start playing. So I called my paper Moving Your Scrum Downfield. Let's start moving, get going. And in that paper, I used the definition of Scrum, which I said, Scrum for me is a simple framework. It's officially, Scrum Guide says lightweight framework, I believe, a simple framework to enable, or that enables people to derive value from complex challenges. Knowing that where Scrum has its roots, software development, new product development, or software development as an instance of new product development is probably a very complex challenge. But in general, complex challenge. But the idea is to derive value. And then value for me describes the purpose of Scrum. Value, a very different driver than volume is. Value is not the same as volume. Volume means doing more, maybe faster, quicker, whatever, more. it still doesn't mean you're doing the right stuff. It doesn't mean that you're creating an impact. It doesn't mean that you're going to increase appreciation or valuation of your people and of your market. So value for me, and value, we've got this is much in line with even the first statement of the Agile Manifesto. So the Manifesto for Agile Software Development, highest priority, valuable software. You could now say valuable products or services, but it's about valuable stuff. And value is something different than volume. And as we know, product, I put it between a little bit of quotes, is the vehicle to deliver value. So if value is the purpose, it's the purpose of Scrum. It was the idea of the whole Agile movement in the first principle of the Agile Manifesto. Then we have to think about product, and in that sense, not just product as a physical good or a box, something you actually ship. It can be physical, it can be tangible, it can be non-tangible, it can be digital. It can be online, it can be good, it can be a service. So I always consider product or service, to make it clear, but it has something to do with at least consumers. Every product as a service has a consumer or more consumers. So it's not about producing something to give to another team. That is not a consumer, right? So it's not creating a product or a service, whatever, and then hand it over to another team or another department. That is not the same. Sort of end-to-end value. That is for me in Scrum terms what a product should be about. Something to deliver value, sort of start to finish, begin to end. Now, is that value and product being the vehicle of value? If that isn't a good sort of clue or indication or starting point to think about reorganizing our organizations. Now, the fascinating thing is that most agile transformations, they don't go beyond just, oh, we have the overall organizational structure and we've got all those isolated individuals in isolated silos and departments. You know what, let's gather, let's sort of construct, build teams by combining people into what some organizations would call teams. But it's often still within the same silos, the same departments, whatever, the same overall. So rather than having a bunch of isolated individuals, you now have a bunch of isolated, often micro teams. Still not really collaborating, still not knowing where to find each other, still not working on the same purpose. And why is that for me? So after a while, organizations in their agile transformations, what I call the illusion of agility, find out that their agility isn't really increasing. They're not becoming more flexible, more responsive, not producing more value, not increasing impact, not increasing satisfaction, and so on. And why is that? Because they've just combined individuals into teams. Nobody dares touching all of the, let's say, top-down layers within organizations, how work is being managed, how people have to work together, the governance things, the procedures, the processes, the structures, and so on. But beyond that, even the idea of bringing people together in teams, while doing that, it seems that no organization is minding what is our product. In that sense, what is our vehicle to deliver value? They just bring people together around certain specifications or specializations or expertise. Often certain larger organizations, you have multiple sort of what I call those micro teams working actually on the same product, but not being aware of that. In that sense, they throw over the work from one team to another team. Team 2 needs to continue the work of team 1 and so on. And that often takes like 6, 7 teams to, in the end, build something that sounds still quite waterfallish to me. And that's because people don't think about what is our product. And that is quite important. So they just think that let's get people into teams and we'll become magically agile. Now, those teams organized within silos and departments, I would suggest to stop calling those teams. For me, in a Scrum context, are not really teams. They're not product teams. They don't have a focus. They don't have a shared objectives. It's just sort of a replacement for the old school sort of isolated individuals. So rather than having people work together, driven by governance, procedures, structures, paperwork that needs to be done, administration, bureaucracy, I would suggest to organizations, and it's also what I do, please start by thinking, what is our product? What is the service? What is the product that we want to get out there as a vehicle to deliver value to consumers of our product? So a product has consumers, they're outside of the organization, they are users, buyers. I call them consumers in general, at least, to the end users. And what then for me a team is within an organization is a team or teams are people that have at least a product owner, somebody who owns the product. Yeah, and whether that person is from business, IT, from what silo department, I don't care. That person's life, professional life then, revolves around the product serving certain consumers. And in that team, you will need people actually doing the work. It's now called developers in the Scrum Guide, or I've called it a team of developers. And I still like the expression development team. You need a development team or a bunch of developers, a team of developers with people with different expertise and skills. So they're from different departments. And not just different departments on the IT side of the organization, but also on the business side of the organization. I know a business analyst, sometimes a market analyst, or a product manager of whatever kind, contributing to delivering high value increments of your product. So suddenly the problem is this goes across the complete organizational constructions. This is not limited or bounded by those functional specializations that we've organized people by. You need a Scrum Master, maybe in the case of more teams, you need might need multiple Scrum Masters, one product owner, potentially multiple Scrum Masters. Now this is a team that has all the people and the skills and the expertise in it, so that they can create valuable increments of a product that potentially have an impact on the market against your competitors via your consumers. And that seems to be a difficulty. So this is a team. Now, it doesn't stop there. A team, in this case, it's a Scrum team or multiple Scrum teams, building valuable increments. They have within the organization, they have stakeholders. There's no hierarchy. Stakeholders might be from the IT side of the organization, business, it might be from higher up, CXO level, whatever, the CFO, I don't care. So the team has stakeholders. Now, sometimes you have people with specific expertise and skills that you don't need in the team all the time, or that you consult with regularly, whatever. Let's call them SMEs, subject matter experts. So within the organization, you have subject matter experts, people that have a certain specialized view on certain aspects, and you might want to consult with them, ask for advice and so on. So they don't do they don't actively participate in the creation of the increments, but a Scrum team might have to consult with them. But again, additional difficulty, you have people from different department silos, layer of the organizations that can deliver an important contribution to your product development work. And this is what I call a product hub. So now you have a sort of way of organizing around the product, starting delivery creation of the product with a Scrum team or multiple Scrum teams, knowing your stakeholders, having subject matter experts and so on. And they should form a sort of system within the system, and that is a product hub. And this is in a much worse worded what I explained already 10 years ago at the first Scrum Day Europe event. This sort of customer-oriented enterprise. So And this is sort of the courage that I feel is lacking in most organizations, the courage to think about the structures and restructure, rethink the organization based upon the fact that you're now going to do Scrum, meaning you're going to apply Scrum to deliver increments of a certain product or service in the most, and here we go, efficient or effective way. So when forming people into teams, start by thinking, what is our product? And then my message is, then start organizing your Scrum so that you can optimally serve that product or that service with its consumers, knowing their stakeholders and potentially consulting with subject matter experts. And that seems to require a lot of imagination, because it seems to be very difficult for people to imagine how Scrum could work in the organization for a certain product, because people have this difficulty of looking across the silos, the departments, the current way of organizing things. And in the end, they end up often even with twisting Scrum, changing Scrum, breaking the sort of minimal structure of Scrum, so that Scrum actually would fit the existing structures, rather than rethinking the structures around Scrum. And that's a product hub. And for me, what is so important about a product, it's much in line with what was already stated in the new product development game, 1986, where we got the name Scrum from. In that sense, a product hub that would operate like a startup, setting its own agenda, taking their own initiatives, where management, anybody sort of on top of it or higher up in the organization would act. And this is almost a literal quote from the new product development game, by the way. Management acting as an investor, not intervening on a daily basis, not intervening in the work, in the execution of the work, but providing guidance, money, and moral support at the outset. In that sense, managing at the outset, not managing the people, managing the results, the impact, the potential value created. So, and in that sense, moving towards a product hub, starting by thinking, what is our product? What is our service? Then rethinking, reimagining, I call it, how you doing Scrum. Now reimagining it towards optimally serving a product or a service. By doing that, you will automatically move authority down the line. Some old expression we like to use long time ago in Scrum, so I'm pulling it up again from my archives in my basement. That is a good thing, moving authority down the line, rather than having multiple layers of hierarchical authority on top of people. You've got management within a Scrum team, you've got management, you've got non-hierarchical relationships within even a product hub. So not just within the Scrum team, they all provide a certain perspective to the product so that the Scrum teams can build a better product. Now, in the next sprint, in the next couple of sprints, and so on. And in that sense, leadership becomes a distributed quality. So there's a lot of management happening in Scrum, but management is not just sort of the privilege of one person who happens to be the one with the loudest voice, the harshest attitude, the most aggressive, whatever, appearance, assertive, dominant person, whatever. This is a much more healthy way of organizing. So, and what I miss in those agile transformations, so no questions about what is our product, because you want to have your team structured ultimately to serve a product. Nobody rethinking the management structures on top of Scrum. So what I miss is the courage to sort of, in all those agile transformations, it's also what I say to people when I go out there, reimagine your Scrum to firm up your agility. The courage to start with a product, build a product hub, do that for a while, then do the same for the next product or the next service. Take your time again, grow slowly. In that sense, use Scrum to introduce Scrum. In that sense, do it iteratively, incrementally. No, that seems to be taking too much time. We are so impatient that we want to go for agile transformation overnight. And if not overnight, then at least over the weekend. And then, so all teams have to now follow the same process, apply the same practices in a large organization, certainly, regardless of their technology, their domain, and so on. And then organizations send them all on the classes, hire a lot of agile coaches that are sort of all over the place then. And then after 2, 3, 4 years, they find out that, remember that illusion of agility. We are not faster on the market. Our impact is not huge. We haven't really improved. We're still losing money. We're still losing our best people all the time. We can't hire new people because they don't want to join us. Our customer satisfaction is not going up. Our market share is not increasing, and so on. And despite all of the financial and other sorts of investments. So imagine taking 2, 3, 4 years to do it in the way I've just described. One product. Organize around that product. Do it better. Take a number of sprints to do that. Then the next product. It's always looking back. I always know very sure that if you would use this approach and taking 2 to 3 to 4 years to gradually do this, you would have been a lot farther than what most organizations are. It's all starting with know your product, know your service, organize your Scrum for your product, for that service, do it properly, meaning make sure you have a product owner and have teams with the capabilities to deliver valuable increments. Meanwhile, rethinking the management and how you manage, let's say, Scrum teams, or how you do management within a product hub, so that you do that hub after hub after hub. so that you gradually transform that pyramid structure into a network structure of product hubs that are aligned with each other around purpose of the organization, meaning, and then you think about what are we going to do together? What do we need within the hub? What do we need outside of the hub? So this is for me the idea of organizing for value. Thinking about value, thinking about your product, thinking about what is value for our product, and then acting to that. In that sense, reorganizing.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Gunther. That was super interesting. Learned some new things myself as well. I can imagine that some of us might have questions for you about what you've just been talking about. But there are two options to ask your question. One is to put your question in the chat. For me, it's also totally fine if writing in chat is not really your thing, that you just simply raise your hand, and then I'm just going to trust you to have a good question. I don't want to put too much pressure on you. If you just have a question, that's totally fine. And I see Matthias already sets the example. So Matthias, if you like, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for your talk. I just want to make a comment. So I'm joined the Agile or Scrum community 2016. Before I was more in conventional processes and companies. But these companies have a clear customer focus and they are aware about the products. And my comment is, so your description is a little bit drastic. So the old style, which is the pyramid, these companies are real poor companies, okay? In between, when you ask for the root cause, when there is in the mindset, a customer orientation, there are a bunch of companies in traditional industry which have a kind of process orientation. Today, it's value stream, okay? And I would say when there is a company which has this kind of process orientation, so working across the silos, and this is in the understanding is from top management to every employee in the mindset. That's a good ingredients for a change project. Because these companies look for value across the silos, but sometimes they're a little bit waterfall. And in actual time, you need to be faster. Yeah. So I just want to say it's a kind of entities. So there are a lot of companies out there which have a kind of process orientation in their mindset. For example, when you look at the whole lean manufacturing development, or when you look to EFQM, there's a clear process orientation. So it's just what I thought when I listened to your speech. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for adding that. And I agree, there are companies out there that have a focus on their customers, but in a lot of them, it seems to be very difficult to sort of organize their Scrum so that they can serve those people as quickly as possible. So within a value stream, that is often still a waterfall from one team to another team and so on. And then the courage to reorganize the Scrum so that they can go to their value stream as quickly as possible. And that's it, because a lot of companies introduce Scrum. And I don't know whether you recognize this, but most companies seem to be going for 2-week sprints. Nobody knows why, but they all go for 2-week sprints. But if you have like 10 teams doing work subsequently, the one after the other one, then in that sense, let's say your speed is not a sprint of 2 weeks. It's at least 10 times 2 weeks. And that's where they fool often, when I see them fooling themselves by organizing working sprints of 2 weeks.
As more top management keeps care about the working processes and all the enabling stuff that's needed, as better shape this company. When you have top management which only looks for results and financial figures, this company has an issue.
Yeah. Well, what sometimes helps, in my view, that also connects a little bit to what somebody said in the chat about urgency. The lack of urgency or the missing urgency They think, yeah, we can do without, and that's why they do these sort of fake things and illusion things and so on. As long as they don't really sense the urgency, that's a problem. So when I go in, whatever, as a consultant, I don't do a lot of consulting anymore for personal reasons. But when I go in for consulting assignments, I always ask to be connected to the management, at least. Often that's often the executive team. And I don't want to talk about Scrum or the technicalities or whatever of Scrum. I want to know, why are we here? And I want to feel from management, CXO, executive leadership, whatever. Do they have an idea why we're here? Do they really feel the urgency? Are they able to express the urgency, the challenges? Because if they're unable to do that or unwilling to do that, the chances are high that you're not going to achieve a lot.
Eric, I see you raising your hand, but I do want to give some people that wrote a question in the chat first. So one moment, please. Jan, I think Jan Bart already touched on your question. Was your question by now already answered? If not, feel free to unmute yourself and elaborate a bit more on that.
Yes, sure, of course. I'd love to. Yeah, like Gunther said, the paper from the new product game mentions that those are multi-million-dollar companies that are described. That is not hippie, sticky drawing people. Those are real businesses, a lot of money. But they had a real felt urgency to change their way of working, because otherwise they wouldn't accomplish their goals simply in the old way of working. Whereas I believe many of the organizations we work in are just doing fine, or believe they're doing fine, and do not see any urgency. The story is, oh, the world is changing so fast, and you need to change really fast, otherwise you're the next Kodak or whatever, and then you're gone. Whereas I believe that many of our organizations are still in a quite stable way. Yes, they are more adaptive with Scrum, but they are not in a life-threatening existential crisis to do things otherwise. And then they're quite comfortable to keep on organizing and managing their organization and people in the old ways, and not giving up their positions, and they do have a benefit from staying like this. And that's my problem more and more the last years with finding Scrum. More often I think, oh well, I work in an organization with maybe 0 Scrum teams instead of 50.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think about that?
I've seen it also, and one of the things I've seen with some organizations is that they feel like, yeah, our cash position is fine, with no problems. We've got plenty of cash, we've got plenty of revenues and whatever, and they think they're safe, and they're going to just do Scrum because everybody else is doing. They want to be agile too, no idea why and so on. And it's not, but underlying you feel this like, yeah, we don't really want to do this. Which is, in a way, it's sort of, can I say that from my perspective, sad in 2 ways. First of all, just because of that, because Scrum, I said it somewhere along I had it in the presentation, Scrum for me cannot be the purpose of Scrum. The goal of introducing Scrum is not to perfectly do Scrum. That is, yeah, you can follow the process, have your events all within time blocks and so on, but that's not the purpose of Scrum.
That's right, but if the top man, a lot of our organizations I know, it's often the IT department or it even separate teams who start working in this new way, and oh, this is a lot of fun, and let's do that, and it somehow helps us, but it stays isolated teams, just as you described. They're still operating within the old structure, but as long as the CEO or whatever the top dogs do not feel a real felt urgency, it ain't nothing like what is described in 1986 or what is the idea behind Scrum, I believe.
So maybe
and that is sort of the Go ahead.
Chip, does this already connect to your question as well?
Well, I'm still looking for some more help on it. Because if urgency will help, for example, management organizations to think differently, change the mindset, it somehow doesn't help me in how are we coping with the climate crises and stuff. If I see within my company, in my experience, if urgency kicks in, management kicks in as well, and not helping us as a team become more considerate and humanize the workplace, or keep a value stream in mind. So I'm still looking for, hey, what's going on with us in a group, not helping us to be more outcome oriented or value oriented.
Yeah. Well, one of the problems I see, and I think Stan will forgive me, that I certainly see that as let's say at least something typically Belgian. We like to sort of get change out of our minds and pretend that everything's fine and so on. Oh, we've got cash, we've got happy people, because in the end nobody dares to speak up and things like that. And in the end, we postpone change or whatever for so long, and then suddenly the urgency, that's not an urgency anymore, kicks in, and it turns into a crisis. And then we totally go into total crisis firefighting mode, whatever, we throw away everything that's possible. And that's suddenly, it's so urgent that there's also no sort of structured approach anymore. No, people don't think about it anymore. There's no rationality behind it anymore. And suddenly it's all sort of testosterone based. And then the only thing I can say, honestly, Chet, about that, it's in a way very sad and saddening that people don't realize you could have started this sort of change a long time ago when you felt everything was comfortable. Don't stop changing. So you could have started a long time ago and you would have avoided this suddenly last minute, whatever crisis, war type of situation that suddenly things. The only thing you can do is talk to people, try to surface the urgency, try to ask questions. Sometimes what I notice with management executive leads, that they actually do know that there's an urgency and there's some sort of at least a good reason to go for this anyhow. But sometimes you want to be brave and courageous too and not admit anything. And oh, you can't admit that nothing is that you can't admit that anything would not be perfect. And sometimes try to get to that sort of protective shield that they have around themselves of as if, but that's, I think that as professionals, all we can do, be honest, ask for things, point out, hey, what can we do? And in that sense, in the end, point out that, if I have 10 teams and they're all working next to each other, but in the end, they're working on the same product. What I've noticed with larger organizations is once that you bring that up, the biggest problem is that you're sort of fighting, can I say that, sort of you're bringing up or endangering status and positions of people, because most of those silos or departments, they have department heads or team leads or senior, whatever types of people. And suddenly you're saying, hey, I would like to assemble, if you really want to serve this product optimally, it means having somebody from that department and so on. And then you want to bring them as a team. And that feels to those people often like giving up control, giving up authority. And if your professional life revolves around what I said on this week, of sort of breathing down people's neck and claiming that it's because of you that those people are actually performing, then you don't want to give up on that, because it feels like you're giving people away. It takes quite some courage to think beyond just that thing.
I think it connects nicely to the question that Francisca posted, and afterwards, Heinz, I'll move to you. So Francisca, if you still have your question, feel free to ask it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gunther. What you mentioned today is what I try to stress in my Scrum trainings, and the response I very often meet is that this focus on value and this focus on why, that's very unexpected to the participants. They expect technical training. They even expect me to explain to them how to use Jira, how to set up their processes and so on.
And how to split user stories and so on.
Well,
to split user stories.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I do explain user stories because they're so central to their daily work, and it's it's value focused, and I use that to stress that. I'm just wondering, And you know, I often also feel that the why of Scrum, very often the teams I meet, they actually do things that are not focused around value, but focused around getting things done, which is more like a Kanban sort of challenge. So do you have any advice how we can communicate better about Scrum to make it clear to those interested in it that it's not about techniques, that it's not about doing the usual business, but just with a different management technique?
Yeah, I know it often, the problem is it often ends up in a sort of utilization thinking, in that sense, being busy, where this is creative, complex work. And we've been overloading people with those ideas for years and years and years, at least a few decades. So they're fully ingrained that. So people almost feel unhappy when they're not really busy, because they feel it's wrong and they should have been busy and so on. And that's sort of what performance is about. It's probably also inspires a really great word about performance reviews and those types of things. So it's gonna take a while before we get out of this. This is what I call the industrial paradigm. In utilization, being busy. And if your manager thinks his or her role is just minding that everybody is busy, then those things will reinforce each other. It's very difficult to break. But utilization thinking, it's not sort of one of my favorite. It's not about being busy, it's doing the right things. Can I give, you talked about Scrum trainings, right? Can I give a very, very specific example from what I encountered in my classes a lot? So we often, in my classes, we talk about, maybe you do too, about sprint burnout charts and managing progress within the sprint as a self-organizing team of developers and so on. And I ask people often, given a situation, imagine you're 1 or 2 days before the end of the sprint, and it looks like exceptionally you're done, you're ready, everything that you wanted to do has been achieved and so on, and you still have 1 or 2 days left. What would you do? And then looking at what people bring up and so on. And always, why would you pull up work from really low on the product backlog, in that sense, low value work, not important work, just to fill your days? What about if you can't find anything that really adds to this current sprint and that would fill up those 1 or 2 days of work? How about not selecting additional work for the sprint? Yeah, but what should we do then? You know what? Do a spike, do some research, look into some technology, look forward to things that just don't do work. There's so much you can do in a creative environment, but that, can I say, for most people, it blows their mind. Yeah, because they're not used to it. It's not expected from them. It would be bad. If somebody finds out, it would be punished. So it's going to take a while before we get there.
Yeah, I encounter that a lot, and I actually, by accident, have found a way to include that in the training. I have one exercise that is very easy, and I give them 12 minutes because I thought originally I thought it would take that long, and usually they're done it like after 5 or 7, and I still give them that time, and then they get the experience of slack. And then I ask them afterwards, so, okay, you were done early, what happened? And then they tell me that they talked to each other, got to know each other, had ideas, got time to ask questions, got time to look up things, and that works really well. May I just add that that's what you described as one aspect. Another big one is that most teams feel they have to do what the customer, be it outside or inside the organization, tells them to do. And they don't feel like the product owner or the people in the team are empowered to add to the creativity of actually developing the product. So that they get something to do and they do that. And even the sorting of the product backlog, they are very hesitant to do. That's not the way they see their role in creating or organizing, as you say, around value.
Yeah. Cool. And that also brings another topic on my mind. Somebody in the chat also asked about humanizing the workplace. One of the things that I think is very important, and again, when I created a book a few years ago called 97 Things Every Scrum Practitioner Should Know, my friend over here, Stan de Knut, contributed to that, and we had a beautiful conversation. And in that conversation, we also talked about intrinsic motivation. You can't download intrinsic motivation into people's heads. You can try to create an environment where they, after a few sprints, maybe a few months, whatever, after a while that they find that motivation again, that energy, that, oh yeah, this is why I like doing that work. And if they don't find it, it might be better for them to find another place where they will find it. But often people just stay there. So, and then sometimes we need to accept that. We try to create an environment where people are intrinsically motivated, where they like to do what they do and so on. But it doesn't always happen. A lot of people go to work just for sort of 9 to 5, spend the day in the office so that by the end of the month they have a salary.
Yeah. So we've got 2 people raising their hands for quite a while. Luckily, it's a digital hand, so you don't get tired of continuously having your hands in the air. So Heinz, maybe you first and then afterwards, Eric.
Yeah, Gunther, thank you for your elaboration. You also said at the beginning, treat the transformation or use Scrum to do the transformation. That's kind of what I remembered. And you met a lot of highly ranked decision makers, let's call them that way, CEOs or whatever. And how would you phrase the need for the transformation in a story? Because what I have in mind is, if we do a transformation, everyone wants to make progress, everyone wants to see progress, and where we often struggle is to make this progress during this transformation somehow visible. And if the transformation was a story, how would you phrase this story, and how would you phrase acceptance criteria that could show us, are we on track? Are we making progress?
Yeah, not in an easy way. I'm probably, maybe because Heinz, I'm not a good storyteller. But next to what I've called today organizing for value, another topic is what I call managing for value. So rather than in that sense judging teams and individuals for their estimates and their performance and their tasks and so on, and for how much work they get done and so on, try to focus in that sense on value. In that sense, for me, the goal of an agile transformation should be to increase your ability to deliver value, or to create value. That means thinking about what do we mean with value, and over the lifetime of the product, by the way, value might be different. In the beginning, it might be learning, market share, whatever. Over time, it's probably going to get some financial things, but those questions are important too. But then the difficulty, and that's again tied into using Scrum to become Scrum or to do Scrum, is also in managing for value, meaning identifying what do you mean with value, and then maybe sprint after sprint, checking in on how are we doing in terms of value. What do we mean with value? How are we doing in terms of value? So that hopefully at the sprint review, it's just very, very tangible Scrum terms. Stakeholders and the Scrum team sit together around how is this work? Has this work of this current sprint been contributing to increasing our ability to deliver value? What is the chances of increasing our impact, increasing customer satisfaction, and so on? And try to get the conversation to revolve around topics like that. And in the end, you might be creating potentially even metrics for that, measurements, whatever sort of data points for that. What do we mean with value? Make it tangible. Sprint after sprint, trying to get a hold on that. You can't really measure value, by the way, if you don't actually release. Until you actually release to the markets, to your consumers, value is an assumption. You think you're increasing value, but you're not sure. You can't know because you're not going out to the market. So that should be a driver to release more regularly, at least, live into production. And then try to get the conversation to focus on value via potential tangible metrics. That might be a revenue, a return on investment, something financially, that might be market share, that might be customer satisfaction that you gather via, I don't know, NPS types of things and so on. And then hopefully, over time, after a while, sort of try to bounce the impatience of your management with those things. And hopefully after a number of sprints, you will see trends. because that's also an important thing. Even if you turn it into very tangible things and a metric or a measurement, even a single measurement is not the idea. In a complex creative environment, you want to have multiple data points so that you can see trend lines. So although there might be a tangible answer to that question, that means managing for value, identifying what do we mean with value of this product, making that clear, and even try to measure those factors. Even then, it's going to take a while before you start seeing trends and patterns appearing. But that is for me the ultimate. That is where we ultimately, I think, need to go. So away from measuring individuals towards measuring value, but also then with trends and patterns and evolutions over time, so that you can make forecasts and projections potentially. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it's really hard for me to break that down somehow. For example, to a company that for many years develops products and sells products like a car, a tangible car like the BMW 5 Series, whatever, which is for sure a product for an end customer. And creating this product already needs hundreds of people. And for this big organization, it really makes it hard for me to imagine how to break that down into pieces with an amount of people that is not too big to work with them.
Yeah.
But
I'm not too familiar with car manufacturing. But one thing I see certainly in a sort of more traditional software development context is that it's because you mentioned a product, clearly a certain type of car, beautiful. Now, already identifying a product in the way that you described in most software development-based, whatever product organizations, that already is very difficult because products are based upon sharing stuff, sharing resources, sharing service, whatever, and so on. So it's already difficult to sort of outline this is a product that is quite independent from other products. So it already starts there. So in a traditional IT or software development environment or an organization that depends on products and software products for that matter, that's already the starting point. What is a product? Name me your product. And then identify what is value for that product. And then start organizing the development and the evolution of that product around that idea of value.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. Sometimes we use these final 10 or 15 minutes to debrief in the breakout rooms, but given the number of questions that people still have, it's quite an active chat. My suggestion is to just stay for 10 minutes in the main channel and see how many questions we can still address. Eric, this is your moment. If your question is still relevant, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Barry. I was I was just in this whole conversation, we talk about things like values and efficiency, and I'm struck by the fact that we're talking in the terms of basically the industrial way of looking at things, and looking at that way, I think we can basically trust in evolution. You know, Agile is, in my opinion, more or less a silver bullet. So evolution will take care of it eventually. And eventually all companies will have to evolve and become agile. What I would find much more interesting is to talk about
Eric, sorry for interrupting. You might be right, but with some organizations, I think they would be out of business before they reach the insight that being agile would have helped them.
Becoming extinct, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean. Eventually, either you change or you become extinct. But that's just talking about it in these terms. What I think is very interesting is to look at maybe a different way of talking about our work in our society, the human factor. And maybe that is a more interesting focus when we talk about Agile, because we can create a win-win situation in which companies improve in the old-fashioned way, but at the same time we create the things like we already mentioned, like intrinsic motivation, ownership. In other words, maybe value is a lagging measurement, and we should focus more on the human side, which is more the leading measurement.
Yep. Absolutely. That's also why I said I'm totally into this, because I see Scrum as a tool to humanize the workplace. And by humanizing the workplace, you will create an environment that inspires and motivates people, and engaged people will produce better products. And they will care about customer satisfaction, and they will care about things. So that's why I focus. So in the past 20, 25 years, almost 30 years of Scrum, we still have a very technical focus on Scrum. In that sense, Scrum as a product development or product delivery framework. And that's sort of what I call Scrum's DNA. For me, Scrum's DNA, so the two strings, is self-organization and empiricism. Now, empiricism is getting to be all over the place. At least people are abandoning predictive management more and more in favor of what I would call empirical management. But we're still forgetting the human side of it. The people side, which is represented for me in the self-organization part of Scrum's string of DNA. Yeah, I totally, and that is absolutely where the biggest gains can be made. It's clear from research, social research, whatever, that the engagement of people in organizations is incredibly low. So up to figures 15, 20, maybe 30% of the workforce is saying that they are really engaged for the company, that they're really motivated, inspired by their work. Imagine we can double that or add 50% to that. Imagine we can increase from 20% engaged people of the workforce to 40%. That is still 60% not being engaged, but imagine the effect of that. But the two things are connected, because I believe Scrum can be a tool to humanize the workplace, create an environment where people like to come to work again. But if we don't let go, breathing down the neck all the time, treating them in the industrial way like robots, replaceable pieces of machinery, we will not get there. So it's a conundrum. It's a problem. But I think as Scrum people around the world, I do agree with you, Eric, that we have been focusing on the people aspect way, not enough, let's say. All discussions are about Scrum and the rules and how to build better products and so on, and how to get people to do that. How about creating a context where people can really self-organize, where risk mitigation is achieved by organizing work in those short cycles that we call sprints. And that's it. And then allow people to do things, struggle, fall, get back up, help them get back up, help them improve, help them acquire new skills, help them go to training if they think that they need to acquire new skills, whatever. Yeah, but yeah, I agree.
So there's 5 minutes left, and I would say that's one question. Is there someone that says, hey, my question is not addressed at all, and I would be super disappointed if my question is not covered in these 5 minutes? If so, maybe raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask your question. Some questions might already been partially addressed, but maybe there is a question that we haven't covered yet at all. If so, let us know, and maybe raise your hand to just ask your question.
In the meantime, can I quickly build on a word that I've seen somewhere in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
About industrializing. Francisca just left, but that seems to be a very difficult message to people and organizations, that what I say is you can standardize on Scrum without industrializing it to death. And my example of all teams having to work on a two-week sprints, often with the same start and end date, that is industrializing your Scrum to death. That is taking away all of the openness that Scrum has. So as an organization, you can standardize on Scrum. Everybody knows what it means to work in sprints. Everybody has a product. Everybody knows what it means to have a product backlog, audits for value or priorities, and so on. But that doesn't mean in a certain context for a certain product, that can be very different. Different sprint length, using user stories or something else, different types of. So you can, as an organization, standardize on Scrum without imposing the exact same way of working on all teams, because that takes away the openness of Scrum. So standardize on Scrum, but don't industrialize it to death.
That would be a very nice sentence actually to wrap up this session. I haven't seen any raised hands either. So I'm just going to do the assumption that we covered all the questions. And well, this is then also my moment to say thank you, Gunther, for this session and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your experiences with so many of us. It's highly appreciated. Any closing note from you, Gunther?
No, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Liberators. Thank you, Barry. And say hi to Christian also as your fellow Liberator. And thank you for offering me a platform to vent all of my annoyance.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to
Okay,
stop
thank you
recording.
all.